Hi class, my name is Steven, and today I'm going to be talking about big game hunting. My main claim is that big game hunting negatively affects the environment. And for those of you who are unsure what big game hunting is, it's the hunting of relatively large animals like lions, giraffes, bears, bighorn sheep, and many others like that, either for sport or to obtain certain animal byproducts. For instance, elephant's tusks or the horn from sheep. Also, big game hunting is typically of large terrestrial mammals and is done on every continent, but may also occur in the ocean, like whaling, for instance. My secondary claims are that big game hunting negatively affect the biosphere, and that big game hunting leads to extinctions of certain big game animals. Okay, now to expand on my first claim, which is that big game hunting leads to extinctions. Big game hunting has led to extinctions in the past. For example, an article by Jim Davis said that modern scientists believe that the eastern elk were hunted into extinction for their meat as well for trophies. Another example would be the Tasmanian tiger. On January 31st, 2013, Dr. Maria Tard from the University of New Wales published an article stating that over 2,000 Tasmanian tigers were hunted between 1888 and 1909. And that in the early 1900s, the population began to decline rapidly, and in 1935, the last Tasmanian tiger died in the zoo. When you look at the relation between the time and when they're being hunted, you can see that when they started being hunted, they declined at the exact same time, or close to it, and so they're directly correlated. So the extinction was most likely due to the hunting. Many animals are still being hunted into very low populations today. For instance, on January 22nd, 2015, Brian Clark Howard published an article claiming that 1,215 white rhinos were killed in 2014 in South Africa, and 1,004 were killed in 2013, which means that there was a 20% increase in just 1 year. If this trend continues, then there's no telling how much longer the white rhino species will continue to exist. If species go extinct, not only will they be gone, but they will also be affecting organisms and other life forms that live in similar ecosystems. Which brings me to my next claim that big game hunting negatively affects the biosphere. An abundance of biodiversity is a very important aspect of maintaining a stable ecosystem, because most organisms that live in the same habitats are all connected in one way or another. The problem with big game hunting is that if one species is taken out, then many predator-prey relationships of that ecosystem may likely be affected. If a species is hunted to a lower population, yeah, it's bad for that species, but it's also going to indirectly affect some of the others that live in the same environment, thus causing an ecological imbalance. For example, if you look at a food web, so if there's like a lion, a jackal, a goat, a rabbit, and grass, the lion eats the jackal will eat the goat and the rabbit and the goat both eat the grass. And let's say we hunt lions almost to extinction, then that's going to decrease the predators for the jackal, which will increase its population, and that will decrease the population of goats and rabbits, because now they have even more predators, and that will thus increase the population of rats. Big game hunting is also taking evolution into reverse by degrading the gene pool. As many of you know, evolution is just the change of organisms over time, and one of the causes of this is adaptation through natural selection. Natural selection occurs when an organism with a specific trait suitable for its environment reproduces and passes on those favorable traits to its offspring. And the reason why big game hunting is taking this in reverse is because hunters are usually targeting these animals with those traits. So they want to kill like the biggest lions or the elephants with the largest tusks and so on. On September 3rd, 2013, a study was conducted by John T. Jorgensen, in which the records of over 7,000 trophy harvested bighorn rams were analyzed to see if hunting had any effect on the size of their horns. This was done because there are regulations in place that state that you can only kill rams with 4/5 minimum curl in their horns. So that's basically saying they can only kill rams that are mature, those are the ones with the larger horns. And by the end of the study, they basically found that although it isn't the only factor affecting the horn size, it is one of the main ones. And I'd like to end my speech by just restating my claims that big game hunting has a negative effect on the environment by leading to extinctions and affecting the biosphere negatively.
All right, Stephen, you're rushing a little bit, which makes your proposition less clear than it should be. You need to pace yourself. I finally figured out what it was that you were saying. It's not that you were mumbling so much, but it's you've got a quiet voice and you were going quick at the same time. So I think you want to be much more clear, especially at the beginning of the speech. However, you did identify your proposition very clearly. I thought that was good. The secondary claims, you laid them out. You have them backwards in the order in which you present them in your preview. That was a little bit confusing. And it wasn't clear. I thought that there were going to be I thought the first one, for instance, was the biosphere and extinction, and it turns out that those are really two separate categories, and I didn't realize that until you got to the body of the speech. So the preview suffered a little bit. In the body of the speech, though, you did cite those claims distinctly, even though they were in the opposite order of what you previewed at the beginning of the speech, and I thought you did a very good job explaining assumptions that exist in each of those arguments. I do think you need to develop a little bit more explanation about why this is controversial. I think that there's just some general genetic information that you're presenting here that nobody disputes. The question is there any regulation or is there any consideration about these kinds of issues when licenses are issued and people are given permits to hunt these particular kinds of animals? Because almost all of those animals, I assume that there's some kind of limitation on how many can be taken. Otherwise, we'd have more of those white rhinos disappearing and fewer of the rams that you're talking about. Although St. Louis is going to have much fewer rams next season anyway. Sorry, I had to throw that one in. I thought you did a good job citing your sources for the most part. I do think you want to give us some dates on some of those, although you did on a couple of them. There were some that, especially the ones that give the long explanations about processes that could use a little bit more specificity. We're also a little dependent on the third point concerning the hypothetical circle of life. I felt a little bit like I've got Mufasa explaining to me what the food chain is here, and I think it would be better to have a source citation on that one. All right, thank you very much.